This is Kelly Sadler, and this is the Washington Times Politically Unstable. Today, we're joined by Cliff May. He's the president and founder of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and we're going to be discussing everything Israel, Iran, and the U.S. and the America First policies of President Trump. Cliff, thanks so much for joining us.
Good to see you, Kelly.
Nice to see you as well. I want to, all of our viewers, I'd like them to go to WashingtonTimes.com and check out your column today. It talks about how this conflict in the Middle East is years old. And I did not know that you were on the ground in 1979 during the Iranian Revolution. Can you talk to our viewers about that experience and why, if the U.S., if President Trump decides to intervene in this war, it is on behalf of America First policies and principles?
Yes, important question. Lots to tell. I'll tell you some and let you ask for any more you want to know. I was a young foreign correspondent in Iran covering the revolution. Most people at that point thought it was an Iranian revolution. It became clear to me that it was an Islamic revolution, not an Iranian revolution at all. It had nothing to do with Iran. If anything, those carrying out the revolution at the highest level only disparaged Iran's past as a great empire under Cyrus the Great. All going back, because Iran is an ancient civilization. But let me tell you exactly how this first came to me. I was in the holy city of Qom, which is where the Ayatollah Khomeini, when he came back from France to Iran, he was first in Tehran and then went there. And everybody said, oh, that's great. He's going to the holy city of Qom. He's going to be a spiritual leader. He's not going to be a political leader. That's a wonderful thing. He gets up on top of a small bungalow in which he's living. And he looks like a character out of the Bible. I mean, it's really quite something. He's got a big, turban and a black robe and a big white beard. And the crowd goes wild, cheering for him. The women ululating. Kelly, you know what ululating is?
I do not know. Okay, all right. Now I do. Right? Yes, I have.
So let me just say, I was working at that point with an Iranian producer. I was working, of all things, for Bill Moyer's Journal on PBS. I was to do a documentary. And I didn't know this producer very well. And he turns to me after this is over and he says, Cliff, you sure are lucky. And I said, what do you mean I'm lucky? I said, I tried to figure it out. I said, what do you mean? Well, yeah, you're right. Because a lot of reporters I know, my stage, they're covering the cop shop in Detroit or fires in Minneapolis. And here I am with a front row seat on history. And he says, you don't understand at all, do you? There have only been a few great men in history. One was Moses, one was Jesus, then came Mohammed, and now there is Khomeini, and you are in his divine presence. That's when I understood this was an Islamic revolution. And what I mean by this is that people say, oh, we don't like long wars, we don't want forever wars, we don't want endless wars. This war goes back 1,400 years. Because in the 7th century, I'm sorry, you got to know some history. In the 7th century, Muslim armies sprung out of Arabia, and they conquered the Byzantine Christians to the west, and they conquered the Iranians to the east. They went as far as what is today Pakistan, well into India, and actually up into the Philippines. They went all the way across North Africa and up into Spain, which for a very long time was a colony of the Muslim empire, of Muslim empires and caliphates. That is what this war is really about. But certainly, just to jump forward, 1979, and they have this Iranian Revolution. From the very beginning, while I'm there, in fact, even before I got there, they are chanting, death to America, death to Israel. Why? Because they want an Islamic revival, and that can only happen with the diminishment or defeat of the West. People forget that for 1,000 years, Muslim empires and caliphates were dominant in much of the world. That ended at the end of World War I, when the Ottoman Empire and Caliphate, the last of the great ones, collapsed. A lot of people thought, well, that's the end of it. No, a lot of people don't. Whether you're Al-Qaeda and Sunni, or whether you're the Islamic Republic of Iran, you want to reestablish Islamic dominance in the world. That's what this war is about. We have to understand. Now, I'll stop there because you may have some questions, but then let's get on to why, although I think it should be clear, but we'll talk more specifically about why this obviously becomes an America first project.
What I want to jump to, and I think what there's a lot of people within the MAGA movement that are done with these endless wars, that they elected President Trump because he was going to withdraw us from them. They don't want to start a new one. They remember Iraq, the weapons of mass destruction that weren't actually there, are questioning even whether Iran has the capabilities to have a bomb, or whether, the Israelis and Benjamin Netanyahu jumped the gun. What do you say to that faction of the party, the Tucker Carlsons, the Tulsi Gabbards, before she was brought in to the Trump administration, that are distrusting of intelligence, distrusting of the Israelis, knowing that the Israelis have wanted to, have that are more along the lines of Obama, that we can make a deal with Iran. We don't need to enter a war with them.
Okay. There's a war ongoing. Yep. Right. I think the Israelis are a tiny little country, less than 10 million people, size of New Jersey. Iran is the size of Texas, with like 90 million people. You think the Israelis really want to fight a war with Iran? If Iran wasn't threatening them with death and trying to, and for a long time surrounding them with a ring of fire, 7 different fronts the Israelis have been fighting on, but they've diminished or defeated Hezbollah, Hamas, almost all of those around them. That's not the problem. But they know, and I talked to an Israeli general about this not long ago. He said, it's great, we have fought on 7 fronts and we've done well. But if Tehran, if this Islamist regime, this jihadi regime gets nuclear weapons and the ability to deliver them, then everything is for naught. They have spent huge amounts of their fortune on underground, on nuclear weapons facilities underground, under mountains. You think you do that so you'll have nuclear power to air-conditioned kindergartens? You don't. President Trump has said, you want civilian nuclear power, peaceful purposes? I'll give it to you. That's not a problem. You want to say, well, we don't really know if they're building a nuclear weapon. Well, that's fine. You'll find out when there's a mushroom cloud. Look, when people are waging a war on you, you've got essentially 2 choices. You can say, okay, if they're going to fight a war on us, we're going to defeat them and we're going to do it decisively. Or you can say we're going to retreat and we'll try to appease them and we'll hope it all goes away. There are various ways to end wars. There's the way Joe Biden did in Afghanistan by capitulating to the Taliban. There's the way that President Obama did in Iraq, which led to the rise of ISIS. And then there's the way that President Trump may want to end this war. I'm not going to tell you I can read his mind, but he's been talking about it. And that would be decisively, because if the Islamic Republic of Iran does not have nuclear weapons facilities, they're not a threat to Israel, to Saudi Arabia, or to the U.S. or anybody else. Then you can go back to saying, let them shout death to America. They don't have the capabilities to fulfill those intentions. But if you want to end wars, you do it by defeating your enemy or letting your enemy defeat you. There really isn't a third alternative.
Yeah, well, President Trump today, in brief remarks at the White House, basically called for an unconditional surrender by Iran, and said, as soon as they do that, we can go into the country and bomb all of the nuclear sites, and then they won't have anything. What do you think the possibilities? Because the Ayatollah has already said, we're not going to unconditionally surrender. Reportedly, they called the White House and wanted to meet there with the President of the United States, and they got rebuffed. How do you see, is there any hope for negotiations with them in an unconditional surrender?
First of all, there is hope, but only because the president has already demonstrated, I'm not bluffing, guys. You thought I was. But I'm not. You thought I was going to rein in the Israelis and you had no problem with that. I decided not to do that because I gave you 60 days to come to terms with me. You didn't do that. And so on day 61, what did I do? On day 61, I said to the Israelis, do what you need to do. By the way, what also happened on day 61? The IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, said that Iran has been lying about its nuclear weapons development for 20 years. You can say, well, maybe they don't know. Maybe, who knows? Maybe Tucker Carlson knows a lot better. Yeah, could be. But I doubt it. So he's allowed that. So now he's made it real. Now, unconditional surrender, which is a great term. And by the way, in my column, I use it before he said it, saying, unconditional surrender is what Roosevelt insisted on in World War II. He didn't say, you know what, let's see if we can come to terms with maybe if we let the Germans have, I don't know, Poland and Czechoslovakia, and maybe we can have an exit strategy to war. No, he said, I don't care. Here's what's going to happen. Germany and Japan, it's going to be unconditional surrender, and we'll know that war is over. Otherwise, the war just continues. Now, it can mean many things. Unconditional surrender could mean that the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, simply says what Trump has told him to say. I understand what you're telling me. I can't have nuclear weapons. They have to be dismantled verifiably, and I can no longer enrich uranium. I agree to all that. I'm sorry to agree to all that, but it's the only way I keep my regime in power. I understand that. You're not kidding me. You're not bluffing. I'll do it. He could do that. He may not want to do that. He's in his 80s. I think he is a true believer. He is a jihadi. He despises the West. You know, and I gave you a little bit of history just a second ago, Kelly. So when Obama says to him, you know, I want you, if you remember, and he did to Ali Khamenei, I want you to be on the right side of history. I'm sure that made Khamenei laugh because he knows his history and Obama doesn't. When he says, if I reach out my arm, will you unclench your fist? He thought, no, we don't unclench our fist to infidels, to unbelievers, to heretics, to apostates, to the great Satan. That's what you are, the great Satan. Israel is a little Satan. We don't shake hands with the great Satan. We don't shake hands with the little Satan. We defeat you, and we will take as much time to do it as necessary. And those of you who are saying, but we don't like long wars, but we don't like forever wars, those are people we know we can beat because, and as they have said on repeated occasions, we know we can beat you because eventually you get tired and you quit, and we do not.
All right. Now, moving on, the president was in the Situation Room evaluating options. And if I have a read on the situation and my sources, yesterday was a day of planning and options. What are our options? If we need to take out these nuclear sites, how do we do that? What can the Israelis do on their own? Now, a lot of focus has been on the Fordo site and the fact that the U.S. is the only one that has these bunker-busting bombs that can penetrate deep under the Earth's surface to dismantle them. And we'd need to fly. They'd have to be on B-52s. There's not a lot of pilots flown out of Missouri, a 30-hour round trip, a lot of logistical planning. What I'm asking you is, do the Israelis have the capability to dismantle these nuclear facilities by themselves, or do they need U.S. assistance?
Look, here's my reading. I think the Israelis can do it on their own if they have to. They've destroyed, and they are in the process of destroying, a lot of nuclear weapons facilities in many places. But as you point out, Fordo is the hardest. It's under a mountain, like 300 feet of soft concrete, very tough. The Israelis don't have the ordnance necessary. Are there other ways that the Israelis, if they're clever, and I think they often are, can do it? Sure. There's there's an entrance, there's an exit, there's a ventilation system. There's all kinds of things it may take boots on the ground for them to do that. Do they want to do boots on the ground? No, but can they do boots on the ground? At a certain point, if they keep up what they're doing, maybe the army of the Islamic Republic is in disarray and they can go in and do what they need to do. But here's what the U.S. can do. We have what B-2s. They're the most advanced plane in the world. Yes, they're stationed in Missouri. They can be stationed in Diego Garcia. Doesn't matter. With the B-2s and their pilots are trained to do exactly what we're talking about, to carry what are called MOPs. What are MOPs? Massive Ordnance Penetrators. Huge bombs, 30,000 pounds, okay? You take a couple of these B-2s, and you fly them in. The defense systems, the air defense systems of the Islamic Republic of Iran are gone at this point, thanks to the Israelis. They've taken them out. So you fly in without much worry, okay? And these are stealth bombers, I should point out. Not so easy to hit, not easy. And you go over the target and you drop 2, 3, maybe 4. And these deep penetrators go in and we think that they would destroy the facility or damage it to the point that it would be very, very difficult to do anything more. And then, of course, the Israelis could come back in and strike it in other ways wherever they see vulnerabilities. This could be done pretty much in a matter overnight, and the pilots could go home to Missouri and have breakfast with their families when they're done. And then President Trump would have the right to say, I just ended a war. And this is how you end a war. Not by appeasing your enemies, but by destroying your enemies' capabilities to harm you in any significant fashion. Because you do not want, from an America First point of view, the Islamic Republic of Iran shouting death to America for 46 years now, based on a jihad going back 1,400 years, to have nuclear weapons. And by the way, what are they developing in concert with these nuclear weapons? Intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. An ICBM is not necessary to hit Israel. An ICBM is necessary to hit Washington, New York, Los Angeles, pick your city. That's what an ICBM is for. And the Israelis, what they are doing is saying, we know where they are as best we can. Their intelligence is pretty darn good, I got to say, of the Mossad. And we know that what they're trying to do is take the nuclear material and turn it into a warhead that they can fit on a missile. And we're going to stop them before they get to that point. That's what we're trying to do. Even if Tucker Carlson thinks, well, maybe, how do we actually know they're trying to? It's very hard to know, by the way, because making a nuclear warhead is done in a very small facility, and it's very, very hard to see. But there are ways. Part of what the Israelis are doing, of course, they're killing Iran's nuclear weapons scientists, because these are the guys who have in their heads how to do this. And that's also very useful. Anyhow, my main point is the B-2s we think that's what they were designed for, destroy almost any facility in the world where we believe they could do Fordo. And again, they could, no boots on the ground, pilots not at risk. This is the mission they've trained for. They go over, they do it, they come back. And then they can say to the Israelis, you know what? You clean up, guys, we're done.
It has to be a surgical strike. It's got to be flawless in its execution. We know that President Trump has taken these risks before, basically taking out Soleimani. And he, of course, today he was like, I may not. You can't give away because it's going to be a very, very intense mission if the president chooses to do so. And I think most within the MAGA world think that that's okay. And let's just point out the fact that Tucker Carlson has been wrong. He said as soon as the Israelis strike Iran is going to basically blow them up, he way overestimated their military might and strength. And the fact that the U.S. and Israel has total dominance over the air in Iran proves that, as well as I think Iran's gone through a third or more of their ballistic missiles. So their inventory, their stockpiles are running low, and every single night that passes, fewer and fewer rockets are fired on Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. I think where the concern comes in is what happens after the strike. If we decide to do this strike, or if the Israelis go it alone into this strike, what happens after? The Ayatollah, as you mentioned, is 86 years old. I think probably he's a dead man walking regardless. We have proven not to be great at regime change here in the U.S. We've got a history of being mired down. So what happens next? What happens after the strike if we decide to join, or if the Israelis go it alone?
Yeah, we don't know for sure, but let me give you a couple of scenarios. One possibility is you end up with a crippled Islamic Republic of Iran. It no longer has the capacity to threaten its neighbors. It can't threaten Israel, can't threaten Saudi Arabia, can't threaten anybody in the region. And it's also probably somewhat impoverished. By the way, the Israelis could impoverish them. Very easy. Just take out all their oil. They don't sell very much else. The Israelis don't want to do that, because they're not trying to impoverish them, because it's not against the people of Iran, who the Israelis believe, I believe as well. Most of them don't like this regime. So you're not trying to impoverish them. They've been very careful to try to avoid any collateral damage, very targeted, everything they do, military strikes on military targets. That's all there. So one thing is you have a crippled Islamic Republic of Iran. It's no longer such a great partner for Beijing, Moscow, North Korea. It's not nuclear like the other ones are. It becomes not much of a problem in the world. Another possibility is that the people of Iran, who I just said I don't think like this regime, get bold and say this is a weak regime. It's failed us for years. It's oppressed us for years. It's attacked women. It's shot women literally in the face for not covering their hair properly. We are going to stage a revolution. Not easy to do, But it'll be easier to do after what the Israelis are doing to the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, the Basij, which are sort of stormtroopers. Much easier. They might do that. Will they succeed? I don't know. I wish them well. It's not for us to nation build. We should be as helpful as we can, absolutely, in every way. But it's going to be up to them to figure it out. There's a lot of Iranians who live in America now, who live in Europe. I mean, something like 10% of the population has left since 1979 because they don't want to live under this regime. They have the most important leader is Reza Pahlavi. He's the crown prince. I've met him, talked to him many times. He's a very erudite, good guy. He has a lot of following. He doesn't want to be the king in the sense of that he rule. He wants to be the constitutional monarch and try to have a free, prosperous, friendly country, friendly to America, friendly to Israel. Iranians are very successful in America and every place except inside there. He might very well go back and try to lead them. Again, we don't know. It's not our job. I don't believe in the Powell doctrine of you broke it, you own it. We don't own it. It's up to them. From an America First point of view, this regime should be no threat to us, and perhaps no threat to our close allies. And our allies who are willing, the Israelis are, to fight a common enemy. We should help them, and Trump is absolutely doing that. And that's Trump doctrine. That's Reagan doctrine. If you have allies willing to fight common enemies, of course you support them. So we don't know what happens next. It could be terrible. There could be civil war inside Iran. That's a possibility. That would be terrible for the Iranians. If you have Persians and Baluchis and Kurds and Arabs fighting among us, that's terrible for them. I hope it doesn't happen. It's not terrible for us.
That was kind of leading me into my next question, the power vacuum that might ensue. Or any of the neighboring Arab states, what are their feelings towards Israel's actions on Iran? And would any of them want to kind of fill that vacuum? Or are they just sitting there silently happy, not being able to publicly state that? But, within the region, how much instability would there be?
Look, I think that what we're talking about would mean that if you're the Saudis, if you're the Emiratis, if you're even the Egyptians, you would say, okay, it's a different world. We're no longer threatened by this regime. And again, as a Shia regime, it threatened its Sunni neighbors. This regime hates America, but they also think the Saudis shouldn't be the custodians of the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Who are they? So the Saudis would be very pleased not to have this threat any longer. Much more likely that a version of the Abraham Accords, a larger version, would ensue, and President Trump would take credit for that, rightly so, just as he takes credit, rightly so, for the Abraham Accords up to now. They're no longer, the Saudis, by the way, they're not looking to take over other countries. They want to be influential in the Muslim world. But the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, who we assume will be the king, he wants to build his country into a major country economically, not just with oil, but with high tech, everything. He wants. He has a very different vision, and it's a moderate vision, and it's a pro-American. He's a reformist. He's not a democratizer. He's in his 30s. He wants to be king when he's in his 80s, but there's nothing about his vision for Saudi Arabia that is a problem for the United States. Quite the contrary. Nor is it a problem for Israel. Quite the contrary. So that's what you'd see. You would no longer have the Islamic Republic of Iran with its ambition to be the hegemon, the power in the Middle East, telling everyone what to do, taking over other countries where it can, and setting up these various proxies, such as Hezbollah, which has made it impossible for the Lebanese to have a serious country over all these years. Right now, they have the chance because the Israelis have decimated Hezbollah. I don't know that the Lebanese can succeed, but they have an opportunity. And again, if President Trump does what we're talking about, the people of Iran will have an opportunity to forge a free nation. I can't tell you for sure they can succeed at that. I don't know. I'm hopeful, and I wish them well. But their neighbors will all be relieved, and the Middle East will be reformed, and it'll be reformed by President Trump. That'll be part of his legacy.
Well, I mean, we're on the precipice of Israel becoming the dominant superpower in the Middle East.
It doesn't want to be the dominant superpower in the sense that we tell everybody what to do. It just wants to be safe.
But to maintain stability in the region, everyone, it's just the power shift that's happening in real time, reversing decades and decades and decades of the status quo in the Middle East is being reshaped before our eyes. It's absolutely stunning. So I think these next few days, weeks, will be pivotal in seeing what the outcome is. But I appreciate your wisdom, expertise, history, and knowledge on this topic. And I know our viewers do as well.
When you're old as me, you have a lot of history to tell.
Right. Thank you so much, Cliff. I appreciate it.